So these survival strategies, as I was saying before, are, you know, the ones that we repeat are the ones that keep us from feeling pain and block us from feeling overwhelming emotions. And these are important to notice because they can block our authentic selves, and they can block life force energy. And so there's generally 5 survival patterns. And we all have all of them to some degree, and we each tend to have 2 or 3 that are stronger than the other ones. And I'll only talk about one today. I'll address all 5 of them briefly, but talk about one in particular. So there's the leaving pattern, which is about, you know, we can leave energetically, we can sort of check out in lots of different ways, but one of the ways we can check out is by sleeping, like, okay, I'm done here. Or we can check out by not feeling our bodies, by numbing. We can numb with screens, with food, things like that. There is a pattern of merging, which is about moving towards other people. This is the one that I want to talk about today. The healers and the helpers and the wellness professionals tend to go straight into help mode. And obviously this is not a bad thing, but sometimes we help as a way of, there's an abandonment of self at times. We want to feel useful. If we're not helping, then we don't feel like, we don't feel worthy somehow. And so the other one, the third, is the enduring pattern, which is we tend to hide within ourselves, and we tend to resist. We tend to block emotion and feeling. Then there's the challenger, which is we want to control things. Okay, we want to control things. We want to, okay, well, I'll do this and I'll do that. And you need to wash your hands, and, you know, nobody's going to be doing any of those activities at home, you know, and I've seen some of that come up around my own kids. And then with the rigid pattern, it can be, you know, some of that could look like mastering task, keeping busy in order not to feel. So obviously I want to say that these patterns are not who you are. They're just, they're part of how your personality formed. And, you know, oftentimes we say like, oh, that's just the way that I am. But these patterns can obscure the real self. And so it's good to know what they are so that we can make other choices, that we don't just say, this is just the way that I am, and that's, you know, it's not changeable. You know, we may still have parts of these that are operating at any given moment, but noticing them when they arise allows us to have more choice, and that choice is freedom. So, and often they're subconscious unless we bring them to consciousness. So let's talk a little bit about that merging pattern, but I want to stop a moment and see if you have any questions about what I've shared so far. And maybe you're, you know, feeling yourself in some of the patterns that I've mentioned. Maybe you are able to identify the ones that you relate to. So in the merging pattern, it usually forms between the ages of 6 months and 2 years. And, you know, there's a wound around perhaps not having gotten enough. And the enough could be around not having had enough attention, love, presence of a parent or caregiver. You know, oftentimes helpers and healers and wellness professionals and even activists and organizers have in their history having had to care for a parent, you know, what is traditionally called the parentified child, you know, having had a sick parent or having had a parent who was very needy, and the child had to step in and be the caretaker. And so this place is a very natural place for us to be, is to caretake. But we, as children, we had to do it at the sacrifice of our own needs. So our pattern, I say our because this is part of my pattern as well, we tend to give at the expense of ourselves. And we seek safety, because ultimately these patterns are about seeking safety when we're overwhelmed. We seek safety through merging with another person. And we deny our own needs, we identify as givers, and we abandon the self. And we give to the point of depletion. And then what happens is that we are resentful. We're like, why, I'm giving so much, why aren't they grateful? Like, we can get into those spaces when we hit those points of depletion. Okay. And unfortunately, these patterns of merging can set us up for codependent relationships and addictive relationships or addictive patterns, maybe places where we eat too much or too little, or engage with our screens or alcohol, shopping, anything like that. And so what we sometimes have difficulty with, right, is attending to our own needs, receiving help and nurturance from others as well as ourselves, holding our experiences, and digesting. And when I say digesting, I mean like when somebody, let's say when somebody gives me something, let's say a compliment or kindness, I have difficulty taking it in all the way. I have, it'll sort of land on my chest and then it'll Teflon its way out, versus landing and digesting all the way through my torso. So, and I want to highlight the gifts of this pattern, because even though, a lot of these patterns originate in early childhood wounding, there are gifts that are attached. And some of these gifts are generosity. Like when we give from a place that is filled up, we are so generous, right? In this pattern, we're incredibly generous, incredibly caring, open-hearted. We have a tremendous capacity for pleasure. And we can really bring those gifts to heal the world in a real way. And I call this, I don't know what to call it, a lecture or this time together, Chiron. I called on Chiron because Chiron, if any of you are familiar, is the wounded healer. It's a term coined by Carl Jung based on the myth of Chiron, who was a healer who wasn't able to heal himself and died after he was wounded by Hercules' arrow. So, and I want to share that with you because we often can hurt ourselves with our giving. So we deplete ourselves, we ignore our own needs and abandon ourselves with our giving. And on the positive side, many of us with a wounded healer archetype, myself included, we teach what we need to know, right? We teach what we ourselves need to practice.